As an example, a little known upside to stand-up comedy is that the earnings you make are entirely tax-free. This is because there aren't any. Your first time on stage really is kind of like you're doing your first cam show. You don't know how to act, you don't know what to say, you're covered with sweat, there's a big black thing in your mouth, and the only person watching is your uncle. And I always cut the six-pack rings before I gently release them into my local wildlife reserve. The only thing in my will is going to be, finish what I couldn't. And then each of my children gets a tote bag, and how many more trips do they need to make to Safeway to complete my legacy? Real joke is my children aren't inheriting anything. Make a handicap joke or something a little distasteful, and someone says, "Hey, I'm in a wheelchair." Wow, I didn't realize, man. Why don't you come up on stage and we'll talk about it? For a guy like Mozart, it was a lot more like playing a couple chords after each other and thinking, yeah, these are some chill classical chords to compose/study to. Or Michelangelo staring at a blank canvas and thinking, yeah, I better start painting this naked boy before someone walks in. They can't walk in a straight line, they can't speak a coherent sentence, and they don't even remember any of it because their brain is so impaired. I'm of course talking about children. And while the solution of dealing with a child is of course alcohol, it is unfortunately the cause as well, so you have to be careful. He stands out from other business leaders for his bold risk-taking, work ethic, vision for the future of humanity, and smoking weed on Joe Rogan's podcast. That means on any given day he spends 16 hours working, 2 hours on his daily routines and meals, and if there's 24 hours in a day, that means he only has 6 hours a night left to shitpost on Twitter. He did not follow my first golden rule of not being creepy, which is being above a 7. He did, however, later find success when he followed my second golden rule of not being creepy, which is being worth $20 billion, and owns what he's called the Boring Company that will soon be drilling enormous tunnels underneath Chicago and Los Angeles for what he says will be high-speed transit. But honestly, at this point, he could just be playing IRL motherlode, because I think we've all decided to just let him do whatever. When I do my taxes each year, I like to overestimate by 15% and then say keep the change. Just kidding, obviously. I don't declare my income tax. But in America, not only do you have to pay for potentially life-saving surgery, the surgeon is legally allowed to keep 15% of your appendix for his collection. But as an example, if we look at FIFA 2018 and compare it to this year's version, you can see that they completely changed the number. But would people actually pay $30 for a brick? And of course the answer was no. They didn't. Almost no one would pay $30 for a brick. They'd pay $1,000 for a brick because it's sold out instantly. In this day and age, if your parents decide to kick you out, it's honestly like throwing a baby bird out of the nest when it's still an egg, or like releasing a domestic rabbit straight into the wok of a Chinese restaurant. Have you been involved with a terrorist organization in the last 7 years? Don't start thinking, well, technically it's only been 6 years and 8 months. It's a trick. Just put no. This all ties back to my golden rule. If you're a terrorist, don't say you are. On the flip side, if you see a pattern of 2 or more worn ranges continually trending towards a lower and lower trough, this is what we call cryptocurrency. In the event you massively increase the value of your portfolio in a short amount of time, what's your strategy going to be to reinvest that money? And there's actually a few different options you have that I'll go through with their different pros and cons. So the biggest advantage of the Amaryllis is definitely the dining space and fumed oak trim. Now, at the bottom of the pyramid, of course, we have the alcoholic, amphetamine-abusing lowlife who mooch off public services because they can't pay their debts or find a job. Fucking grad students. If you're worth $75 million, you have the ability to see almost anyone in the world just by asking. But if you're worth $75 billion, you have the ability to see almost anyone in the world without asking. Oh boy, I'm not doing anything on Sunday, and I haven't seen Cindy for a month. I should ask her for coffee and I can see how her new job is going. Whereas an introvert is more likely to say, oh boy, I'm not doing anything on Sunday. If you take something like a concert and control for drugs and alcohol, the people near the front will tend to be more extroverted, while people who are more introverted will be further away from the stage. Like at home. Wow, you don't believe they actually landed on the moon, do you? You should probably stop talking to that person because really, what kind of idiot still believes in the moon? You might be paying $20K a year for school and are worried that you won't get a job, but hey, $20K a year for hope is a fucking bargain. Is your friend passing out? When this happens, you'll notice that everyone else will do one of two things: help them or draw a dick on their forehead. This is a good way to check your social circle for whether or not you have good friends, depending on what they did first and the size of the dick.